Hey!
Welcome to the pot.
First of all, I want to apologize. I have some congestion is causing me to cough. So I apologize. I don't have a cough button on my microphone. I wish I did. But like I say, I apologize. Also, I apologize that there was a slight glitch at the beginning of the show. The go live button failed. And I started playing the theme song, and I noticed that the live button hadn't worked, so I had to go back and do it again. So if there's a little Humpty Bump at the beginning of the show, it's StreamYard's fault. StreamYard has been giving us fits all morning.
We're seriously going to start looking for another provider. This is becoming... this on top of the fact we don't have a whole lot of resources for continuing on the stream, along with the technical glitches, it's just getting to be pointless.
We have to find somebody more reliable.
Yeah.
For instance, Melanie went to the trouble of getting her computer and her webcam and everything all set up this morning. And I would talk, and a minute later, Melanie would answer.
It was like old Godzilla movies, only without all of the updated video stuff, because it looked better in the Godzilla films.
Yes, and this was not working out this morning, yep. So Melanie had to switch back to her iPhone, which actually looks...
I think it's
fine.
Better.
It's fine, but we're trying to get Melanie up and using the green screen, which you can't do with an iPhone for some reason. Why iPhone hasn't built that into their system, I don't know. But
for the same reason that they keep taking things away when you'd think they'd be adding to them. I meant say 2 bits of news this morning, and then we'll get to our topic of the day. The first thing is that there was a lot of mourning and memorials for the young Irish Israeli girl who was believed killed in the Hamas attack. They had created a memorial for her, and her family had mourned her.
Don't tell me she's still
yesterday
around.
She walked out with...
Oh, well, thank goodness.
She's alive and well. And obviously her family is beside themselves, and that's the kind of thing that never happens. So
no.
And
nice to hear some good news for a change.
Amen. The other thing is there's a lady in Great Britain who has been ostensibly, apparently, cured of dementia. She was given medication, and on top of it, they withdrew her from her beta blocker she was using for her blood pressure remedy, and her mind has been restored. She was a writer and a compulsive reader, and she'd stopped reading, she'd stopped being able to write, and she can now do both again. And she's back to her old self. So, good days ahead, better things in the office. So, all right, on to the Apple TV as the new renaissance of sci-fi TV. I do not have Apple TV. I've got everything else, but I don't have Apple TV. But, yeah.
I do.
Yeah, Mark does.
I have just about every streaming service known, because my daughter and son-in-law and 2 grandchildren live with me, and they have several services, and I have a bunch of services.
Yeah.
I have HBO Max. Well, they call it Max now. They don't call it HBO Max. I have Apple TV. I have Amazon Prime. Like I say, I've got Netflix. You name it, I've got it. I've got NFL Plus. So if you want to watch something, come over to my house.
You've got it.
Yep.
I've got Netflix and Hulu and Max. I did.
Oh, I've got Disney, and I have Disney Plus too.
Oh, I have Disney Plus too. But
Now,
I don't have any of the smaller ones.
I'm a what do they call it? A legacy member of Disney Plus. I've had it since it began.
Whoa.
I signed up at D23 before it existed.
Ah, there you go.
They had a deal where you could get it for $4.95 a month for life.
See, those are the ones to sign up for.
Yeah, because I knew it was going to go up in price.
I did the same thing with Amazon Prime. It was their first week of Prime, and they said you will be locked in at $29.95 a year, which was at the time $10 more a year than was being charged initially. However, I realized that it was going to double the price within a year, so I locked in at $29.95.
Yeah, and Disney keeps trying to figure out a way to worm out of the $4.95 thing.
Always.
But it specifically says in my contract that it's a lifetime contract.
and
I ain't dead yet.
And you have not taken up any of their offers to add yada 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 and
Oh no. Oh, they've been very sneaky with that. You know, we'll add this. All you have to do is sign a new contract. No. No new contract for this guy.
My niece just brought me in some English breakfast tea. So if I start acting weird, you'll know why.
If you start speaking with a British accent?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Now, while Melody drinks her tea, if you're a science fiction fan, you used to be on the Sci-Fi Channel. Well, the Sci-Fi Channel is, for all intents and purposes, non-existent. Yeah, I don't know why it still exists, to be honest with you. That's one I don't have and don't plan on getting it. Because they don't have anything worth watching.
Since Face Off, there's nothing to watch.
I mean, back when they're the ones that put Battlestar Galactica on the air. And it was great back then because they were spending the money and they were putting out a good product, but now... So, the one doing that and the one supporting new sci-fi is Apple TV. If you don't have Apple TV, you're missing out on some good sci-fi. There's a couple of stinkers there too, but they've got some good stuff. Probably their big one that they're pushing right now is called Monarch: Legacy of the Monsters. And it's basically Godzilla.
I noticed.
And there's not a lot of monsters. You can tell, those monsters cost a lot of money. First of all, they have to pay the people that own Godzilla. And they have to pay to computer generate Godzilla. So that's a lot of money. So I can see why Godzilla wouldn't be in every scene. because it's a whole lot cheaper to pay Kurt Russell than it is to pay Godzilla.
He's cheaper than Godzilla.
He's much cheaper.
And he brings his kid with him, so.
Now, I haven't noticed which one of the characters. Melody told me that his kid's in it. I hadn't really noticed who he plays. It's got Chris Heyerdahl. The funny thing is, well, I don't know. I assumed that was Chris Heyerdahl. Maybe his kid plays a young Kurt Russell. I don't know.
It would make a lot of sense.
But anyway, it's got Mari Yamamoto. Pardon me if I don't pronounce these correctly. Oyoko Kudo and Chris Heyerdahl. Now, for those of you who are big sci-fi fans, it has the voice of Tamlin Tomita. Now, Tamlin Tomita may be familiar to you. She played Lieutenant Commander Laurel Takashima in the pilot episode The Gathering of Babylon 5. She was replaced in the regular series by Claudia Christian, who played the same role just with a different name. And you also may know Tamlin. She played the girlfriend of the Karate Kid in the movie. So that's and it's really pretty good. I've seen the first 4 episodes, which is what's out there. I forget if it's 3 or 4. I've watched what's available. It comes out every Friday, and it's really interesting. The acting is good. The special effects are good. There's not, like I say, there's not a lot of monsters. So if you're looking for something that's got a monster in every scene, this isn't for you. But it does address monsters. They do show Godzilla in one of the episodes. I'm not going to tell you which one. And I'm going to be light on detail because I don't want to ruin these for you. I want you to watch them. But it's a good series. I would recommend watching Monarch Legacy of the Monsters. That's a good one.
The character of Lieutenant Lee Shaw as young man is played by Wyatt Russell.
Okay. And he does look like he doesn't look like a young Kurt Russell, but he looks like a younger old Kurt Russell. Because Kurt Russell doesn't look like Kurt Russell did when he was a kid.
No. But
he is not.
Actually, you can tell that's his kid, but he actually favors his mother more. So
Now, if you wonder how Kurt Russell got there, now keep in mind this. When Disney purchased Pixar, Steve Jobs' wife got a whole bunch of stock in Disney. And Steve Jobs' wife still has a whole bunch of stock of Apple. So I think there is your Disney-Apple connection. And how they might have persuaded Kurt Russell to come over and do the show. Because Kurt Russell hasn't done anything for a while, and it's nice to see him. He's still active. He's
only 72. It's not like he's.
And he looks like he's in good shape for 72. He's good. Did some action scenes and everything.
Yeah, he's that might be a body double, but
well, it's possible. Yeah. Like the old William Shatner. Well, William Shatner, when he was 25, had a body double.
Had a body double, yeah. He's never done his own stuff. Except for acting. That's the only stunt he's ever done. It is, right now the series is getting a 7.6 over on IMDb. which is very high for science fiction over there.
Yeah, it's a good show. I would recommend watching it. Now, next on their list, and this was their big show until Monarch came out, is Foundation.
Yeah.
Now, Foundation has very high production values. It's absolutely network quality plus. I didn't have time to write down the stars of the show, but it's well acted. I've watched the first 3 episodes. Well done, follows, they never exactly followed the book, but it followed the theme of the book, which is about empire that is starting to implode and how they're trying to keep society going even though the empire is falling by the wayside. So it's good. And in one episode, it has Alexander Siddig. Now, I don't know if you know who Alexander Siddig is, but he used to go by the name of Siddig El Fadil. And he used to be Dr. Bashir on Deep Space Nine. So if you want to see him, he's in this. I've seen him in a couple of other things, but he is in this. He's just in one episode. So he doesn't have a recurring character. Now, the third one, now this is the ones that I have seen. I haven't seen all of these. Hello Tomorrow. It's a very interesting show visually. They kind of went out on a limb with this one, and I like that about Apple. That's what the Sci-Fi Channel used to do, is they used to take chances on these young directors, and they would let them try something. And if it worked, great. If it didn't work, oh well. And they give them a chance, which I like. They're renewing almost everything for at least 2 or 3 seasons. So they give the show a chance to get its feet and become something. Because a lot of the sci-fi shows, the epic science fiction shows, like Star Trek Next Generation, you watched the first season of Star Trek Next Generation, and there were some absolute stinkers.
Oh, yeah.
Like Code of Honor. If you've ever seen that thing, networks won't even show it. It's a racist, it's a terrible racist piece of crap. I don't know what they were thinking when they made that show.
I don't think they were.
Have you ever seen it?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it is not good. Now, some of them, everybody, the one about everybody getting the germ and turning drunk, I forget the name of the episode, where Data has sex with Tasha Yar.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I thought that was funny. It was okay. I'll cut them a little slack. It doesn't have to be serious sci-fi all the time.
No.
But,
well, there's serious sci-fi. There's, stupid steps for recurring characters. But there's a handful of really horrible episodes in all science fiction series.
Oh, yeah. And every series has got a stinker or two.
The original Trek had Spock's brain, and Voyager had Neelix's lungs.
The funny thing is I went to the Improv and saw an acting troupe recreate Spock's brain as a comedy show, but they did it word for word right out of the script. But they would have a look on their face like, It was very funny, and it ended up having the guy playing Chekhov in that ended up on that Star Trek New Voyages show.
Oh, there you go.
Because he was in the episode where Walter Koenig time traveled. Have you ever seen any of those New Voyages episodes? Yeah. They're really pretty good.
Yeah.
The New Voyages, and I forget what the other one is. There were two of them that were real good. New Voyages and Star Trek Continues.
Now that would be a good topic for an episode.
Yeah, well, we'll do that sometime. We'll sit and talk about that. The fellow who played Kirk in Star Trek New Voyages, he was a gaming entrepreneur who came into some money and decided he wanted to be Captain Kirk. So he bought the sets. He had the sets built. And it is it looks every bit as good as the original Star Trek.
Well, with
modern cameras and stuff. Yeah. So, but the lighting and everything is very close to the same look.
Fantastic. More power to them. And that's the thing with fandom is that so many people are drawn to fandom as a creative outlet. And they tend to be very talented folks. So, that's all of these streaming giants looking for content are going to be pulling in off of people doing things like that.
Well, Star Trek Continues, Scotty is played by Chris Doohan.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, James Doohan's son plays Scotty, and he does a good job. He imitates the accent. He's real good.
He's probably heard the accent all of his life, so, I was watching some show the other night where the fellow who ran the engine room in this ship was named Scotty. So he has an archetype has remained with us. So, okay, the Apple TV how much of their programming is science fiction?
Oh, it looks like it's maybe 20%, but science fiction shows are inherently expensive to produce.
Yeah.
Your average romance doesn't require a whole bunch of special effects budget.
Right, exactly.
So that's the problem getting a sci-fi show to air and to stick and continue to be produced. Legacy of the Monsters, they're smart. They're picking and choosing where they use their budget. They can't have Godzilla destroying Tokyo in every episode. They can't afford it.
Well, so, there is only one Tokyo.
That's right. So you're just gonna have to be used to. He'll come around, but every once in a while. But I mean, in reality, if there was a Godzilla, you couldn't have a society like we have if he was stomping on Burbank and, every other week.
There's no Godzilla?
Now, something I find kind of interesting about this movie is the early part of the series is almost all Japanese actors and it's dubbed in English.
Ah.
And then they show Kurt Russell. Well, what that reminds me of
Raymond Burr.
That's right, the original Godzilla. A lot of people don't realize the original Godzilla movie was released as a Japanese language film. There was no English actors or English dialogue in the movie. But what they did was, is they went back, they cut in some very cleverly edited scenes where they pick up the newspaper and look at it, and it's in English. In the original film, they picked up the newspaper, and it was in Japanese, which, unless you speak Japanese or read Japanese, you're going to be out of luck. So they realized that there was a whole big audience sitting over here that liked monster movies. So they did that, and then they went out and they found Raymond Burr, who was not a big star yet. He had done some things. He had done, I think he had done Perry Mason before Godzilla. Yep. But he was in between Perry Mason and Ironside. So, he needed work, so he took the work, and he did a good job. They got some of the actors from the Japanese cast, and they filmed some scenes with Raymond Burr, so it made sense story-wise. And Raymond Burr happened to be where Godzilla was attacking. So, like I say, it made sense story-wise, but it made it much more palatable to an American audience.
Right.
And having Kurt Russell in this film that was primarily Japanese language at the beginning of the show, it reminded me of that. It gave an air of the original Godzilla.
Strongly suggestive, yeah.
Yeah, which I like that. I think that was a good idea.
Well, they also did a strong science fiction actor presence, and that's been such an important thing for the successful shows. Is they pull somebody out of the odor of science fiction who has been in other shows or films. And Kurt Russell has done a number of science fiction titles in the past. It hasn't all been,
Well, I heard that when they were doing the Godzilla that they wanted Gene Barry because he had the sci-fi credit from War of the Worlds.
Okay.
But
maybe
he was.
Thought they couldn't get Kurt Russell.
No, I'm talking about for the original Godzilla.
Oh, I was going.
Gene Barry's dead.
Still alive?
No, Gene Barry's long dead. But he had filmed.
Hilda is alive. You know what I'm saying?
Not too long before that, he had filmed War of the Worlds. He was the star of War of the Worlds. And so but he was too expensive. Now, Raymond Burr was not. Yeah. So they got Raymond Burr.
And
yeah.
And
but anyway, I'm sure they got him pretty cheap because he was out of work at the time. All right, now another one. This show is a step down from those first two. Those first two are the guys. This one is the little brother. And this one is called Hello Tomorrow. And Hello Tomorrow is about a door-to-door salesman who is selling timeshares. And he is selling timeshares on the moon. And they have convinced people that there is a domed city on the moon. And there really isn't a dome city on the moon. But you don't really find that out until like episode 3. But it's pretty clear there's something shady going on when you're watching the first episode. But he seems it has a kind of a Pleasantville feel to it. If you ever saw that movie, it kind of has that feel to it. Because they live in this perfect little. They don't live there. They're traveling salesmen. So they're in this community. It's a very pretty little community. They have these. All the cars look 1950-ish, but they're hovercraft.
See, that alone, that aesthetic is going to go crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very interesting. They've, got a 59 Caddy that's a hovercraft. I mean, that's great. They did a good job of it. It looks pretty real. It has Billy Crudup, who plays Jack Billings. It has Hanifa Wood and Hank Azaria. Now, Hank Azaria, you might not recognize his face unless you've seen, what was he in you were telling me about? Mad About You. But his voice has been on TV for 35 years on The Simpsons.
Yep.
Because he plays Moe, he plays Chief Wiggum, and the preacher. He plays many characters. So many that when he threatened to leave the show a few years ago, they opened the vault and made him stay. And there was some kind of contract agreed to, and I don't know what it was, but I'm sure it wasn't cheap.
Oh no!
Because if he left, they'd have to take the show off.
That's the key for voice actors is they have a lot of might in their contract negotiations. Because, you lose them, you've lost that character, or
now,
those characters.
Don't anybody get mad at me, but I think it's time that The Simpsons came to an end.
5 years ago was the time.
Because The Simpsons is not the kind of show that can be under the Disney umbrella. Because the hard-edged comedy coming out of Bart Simpson and Homer is just not. They have toned it down severely under Disney.
Yeah.
You watch some Simpsons before Disney took over, and watch it now, and tell me you don't see a big difference. And it's not nearly as funny as it used to be.
God, no. And the thing of it is, the voice actress who plays Bart is obviously very powerful, and she also is a Scientologist, and she clearly isn't very bright, and that tends to be the way with Scientologists. The ones that last longer.
Oh! I can hear the emails clicking now.
Good. Let them at me. I'm sorry. This is the thing, okay? John Travolta is a very nice man. I know lots of people who've interviewed him and met him and all kinds of things. He truly is a good person. He helped a friend of mine immeasurably once and didn't have to, which reminds me I have the kindness story to tell. But he's not very bright. And that's how they've gotten the Scientology past him all this year. However, he's lost his son, he's lost his wife, and their big Scientology appearance that they're all supposed to be at every 5 years, he missed this year.
The opinions of Melanie Clark do not necessarily reflect the opinions of FanFleck.
Oh, yeah, they do.
I'm just trying to avoid emails.
Yeah, send them to me. But anyway.
Okay, so back to the show.
So Cartwright, who is, I can't ever remember, Nancy Cartwright, has taken over a lot of the show now, and it shows. So I agree. Time to unplug.
Well, the lady that did Marge Simpson has got to be in her 80s.
Julie Kavner? Yeah.
Yeah. Because she was on Rhoda. She played Rhoda's
This is her sister.
Yeah.
And
but
she's
anyway,
a good actor.
Yes, I agree. We're having Wi-Fi problems again.
Yeah.
So if things happen, it's not my fault.
You'll know
okay.
why.
Back to the show.
Yeah.
What you get with Hello Tomorrow, I'm trying to keep from spilling the beans completely on the show. Jack Billings, he's a very decent-seeming guy. He actually runs into his son, who he had abandoned when he was little. His son doesn't know that that's his father, but he finds out that he's actually his dad, and he's trying to look out for him. But the other salespeople that are in the group are kind of pissed off because he's giving him breaks that he's not giving them, even though he's a new salesperson that he's brought into the group. And you basically, during the show, you see Jack Billings' life just come to pieces. And he keeps trying to keep his head above water, and it's difficult. Now, I understand it's been renewed for another season, so it's okay. Like I say, it's definitely not to the level of the other two, but the cars and the background and the visuals are really cool. So that's almost worth watching it just for that.
And give them time for the writers to notice, and they'll start speccing scripts, and maybe it'll take off.
Could be. Maybe we'll do something with it.
The best years of the X-Files were not the first. And as we've already discussed, every science fiction show has crappy, usually first season shows before they.
I always like the pilot episode, which is the one with the kids that are in comas and they keep coming out of the comas and going out in the forest to meet the UFOs. That's the pilot episode.
Yeah.
But I always like that one.
Yeah.
Now, here, this next show I have watched, I'm not a fan. I stopped watching it because of that. It's called Invasion. It's basically the typical aliens come and take over, and they're so powerful we can't stand up to them, and we're trying to fight them off and kind of thing. It has the appearance of a BBC product. I did not have a chance to look and see where this is coming from, but it definitely has that appearance. A lot of the actors, it's set, some of the first couple episodes are set in London, so, that could be why it has that feel, but it looks like that. And the special effects, I'm sorry, but the special effects are really bad. Whenever you don't have good special effects, you darken the screen so people can't see what they're looking at. And that's what they have done in this. Every time the aliens appear, it's in the dark, and you can just barely get a clue of what they look like. There's only one scene where you can see the creature, and the way it looks and walks and moves doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like a tripod. You remember the old BBC series, The Tripods?
Oh, yeah.
It kind of has the appearance of a tripod. So it may be some people coming from those shows. But anyway, I don't recommend it. It's played 2 seasons, and there's no news about whether it's coming back or not. And Apple usually says pretty quick if they're coming back. So
Right.
I don't know. Okay, there's 2 more shows. There's one that I don't even know if I would call it sci-fi, but Apple TV calls it sci-fi. And it's For All Mankind, which is what I watched so far. I just watched 1 episode. It looks very reminiscent of the 60s space race kind of thing. But in this one, it's an alternate timeline, and we didn't make it to the moon first. The Russians did. And it's got all sorts of stuff about how that affects the politics and so forth here in this country, because they have to make excuses as to, we spent all this money on the space program and the Russians beat us. So you can see how that might be not good.
That might cause a few problems.
So I understand that's been renewed. Like I said, I haven't seen much of it, so I can't really talk about quality of anything. I noticed that they used an awful lot of stock footage of launches. So I think they're saving a lot of money there, which is fine. Okay, the last one is one I have seen absolutely nothing of. I don't know who the stars are except for one of them, but I did read the synopsis of it. It's basically a dystopian, end-of-the-world Mad Max themed show. I've kind of gotten tired of those, you know. I like something like upbeat. Like, that's why I like Star Trek. Because Star Trek, other than these new ones they've done, I like Strange New Worlds because it's not, end of the world. It's hopeful that we can do something with ourselves in the future.
Yeah, that's become the main problem with a lot of science fiction, is it's stuck in this Thunderdome universe that...
Yeah. And, you don't mind watching 1 or 2 of those. I think the first one that did that was Planet of the Apes. Kind of made you like, oh God, is everything going to go to hell?
Yeah.
So Silo is to say it's based on a silo that they have moved into and turned into a fortress. And it's all about the sheriff who runs things, and it's played by Tim Robbins. Now, that was the only name that I recognized from the list of people I saw. So he's a reasonably big name.
Yep, a solid B actor.
Yep. So he's good to hang their hat on and build the show around. That's what you usually do. You try to find an actor you can build the show around.
And
bring
the
in
character and expand it.
Bring in some other good actors and work with it. So that, as they say, is that. That is all my knowledge of Apple TV. But I have to thank Apple TV for giving us all those science fiction shows to someone who is a science fiction fan, but I'm a fan of good science fiction.
Yeah, yeah. There's way too many post Rubber Monster sci-fi shows that appear for a season and then vanish.
Well,
Amazon, yeah,
I'm
Amazon
sorry,
did a couple of good ones, and unfortunately,
but they don't stick with them.
it's spineless. They just let them go.
And that makes no sense because like I said, there's a lot of those shows that the first season, but the only one I can think of that the very first season was great, and that was Battlestar Galactica, the reboot with Ronald Moore.
Right.
Because the first season of that was outstanding.
Well, they had an idea of what they wanted to do. They knew the vision of the series. And that's the problem with most series, especially, universes that are brand new, is they don't know where they want to go. And by the time they had recreated Battlestar Galactica, they knew where they wanted to go with it, what direction, what they wanted with the characters. And so that's how you create a strong series. And it's very unusual unless you have a strong vision for a TV show for it to have any legs at all. And that's why so many of the things like the X-Files had a strong overarching arc that it played around.
Well, there were whole seasons of the X-Files that were just unwatchable.
There were a couple, yeah. But there were enough. I mean, I had a less charitable view of the show at the later seasons until I started rewatching. And I'm really kind of amazed how contemporary it seems when you watch it. It's, aside from the big cell phones and that kind of thing, and not knowing what the web is, a lot of what they did was years before their time. But again, it's science fiction, so some of it's gonna be okay, some of it's gonna be just dreadful. So
now, do you remember the X-Files spin-off show?
Millennium? Yes.
With Lance Hendrickson?
Hendrickson, yeah. Yeah, we just saw the pilot episode for it. It was one of the X-Files.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad series.
It wasn't bad at all. And there actually were a few scenes I still remember from it. So it really could have possibly held its legs. But the main problem with it was once Y2K was passed and people realized that, we weren't going to launch into Thunderdome, then, how do you keep that up? It's the millennium.
Well, anybody that really thought that was going to happen had no knowledge of computers and how they work.
Or had never talked to anybody who had programmed before. I knew enough old COBOL printer programmers who told me, we foresaw that years ago. Yeah,
it was taken care of before anybody ever started worrying about it. It had already been.
Yeah, because somebody said, you know what we should do.
There were some old equipment that they weren't planning on continuing with anyway.
Yeah.
That failed, but they had a replacement for those things, so it really was nothing to worry about. So
it was very funny. There was a web show that became a radio show uh, called Rense, Rense. The host was Jeff Rense, who was a demi-fascist kind of fellow. He hated everybody essentially, and except for Linda McCartney, he really liked Linda McCartney.
Well, it's better than liking Yoko.
Oh well. Anyway, Rense's webmaster, which used to be a real title. Now, it's all done with apps and such. But his webmaster was on a message board with me. And we were over talking about the future of the web and what all of that was going to be. And he came in and he said, well, Y2K is going to wipe it all out. And I said, Y2K is not going to do shit. And he says, well, what are you talking about? I said, nothing's going to happen. Nothing. And he said, oh, nobody can, nothing. And I said, oh, yeah? Talk to anybody who knows what they're talking about. And I don't mean conspiracy theorists from lame little web shows. I'm talking people who know computers. And he refused to ever reply to me again.
You were talking about shows that are planned out in advance. That's one of the things that I liked about Babylon 5.
Yeah.
Is that Babylon 5 had the story arc completely written and planned out for 5 years. And John Michael Straczynski's biggest problem was getting the 5 years because Warner Brothers kept messing with them, and that's why he ended up making that. I forget the name of the episode, but it was this futuristic, like looking back at what happened to Babylon 5, and it was supposedly he had made that episode just in case he didn't get season 5. So if you watch Babylon 5 and you get to that episode, just don't watch it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing with Straczynski is he really hated fan fiction. And fan fiction is one of the real runners that keep shows going. And he hated it because he didn't want people creating an expectation for other things happening that weren't going to. And
with fan fiction, a lot of times it gives writers ideas.
Yeah, oh well, heck yeah.
Like, the picture of Spock's pet, Sealot, I think they call him. That big saber-toothed teddy bear looking thing. That was drawn by a fan.
Yeah.
Nobody at the studio had ever drawn a picture of it. And one of the writers or artists that was involved in the show saw that fan art and said, hey, that's good. And they, I guess, I don't know if they gave her any money for her idea, but probably not. But that's what they patterned the character after.
Yeah, the second of the reboot Trek movies essentially ripped off Della Van Heis's Del Rey paperback. And Della was a friend of mine. And everybody who's read it and seen the movie agrees. So, there can be negative things about that. Unfortunately, Della, when she sold the novel, was a young, hungry writer. And Del Rey would buy the novel outright for X amount of money, which always seemed like a good idea at the time when you're young and hungry. And
till it sells a bazillion copies and you get nothing.
So she unfortunately She passed about a year ago. But no, she never had any kind of. If anybody who wants to see it, gosh, I wish I could remember the title. I will look it up and let you know next week. It that is the original story that they ripped off for the second Trek reboot movie.
Well, that's what happens when you're not a big name. Like Harlan Ellison has given Star Trek hell for how many years over City on the Edge of Forever?
Yes. And as much as I hate to admit this, Harlan had a point. So,
Yeah, but they couldn't have produced what he wrote
no,
at that time. They could not. They couldn't have produced what he wrote at that time.
Well,
So,
I mean, that was the nature of his fiction always. It was always beyond the limits of the production values at the time. And he always would push the edge.
there's a lot of books like that. You just can't be put on film. One of my favorites is Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. They have made a number of attempts at making a movie based on that, and they've all sucked. They haven't grasped the point of the story. They can recreate the events, but they can't give it that feel that you get from reading the story.
They don't have the vision. They aren't able to reimagine the vision, and that's always like all of Arthur C. Clarke's work is most of it has been very poorly adapted, at least in my opinion, and the ones that are easy to adapt are not the best writers. So
okay, we have to wrap this up. Just to tell you, Melody had a good idea, and I think next week we're going to do an episode about the Star Trek fan shows. There are a number of them I don't think are worthy of mention. They tried. It looks like about like something I could put together. but we might mention them. I'll let Melody look up all the ones like that. And I'll pay attention to the two biggies, which is Star Trek Continues and Star Trek New Voyages. Those are the two best ones.
My heart is always with the little creators because, I was once one myself and still am in some capacity. So
there are a number of other ones that people try to tout above New Voyages and Star Trek Continues. I have sampled each one of those, and they're not up to New Voyages and Star Trek Continues.
For ones that have more of a heart in them than ego. So
well, Star Trek Continues I like above New Voyages. Yeah. New Voyages had a little better production quality and had some of the stars from the original show on it. Grace Lee Whitney did an episode of one, I forget which one she was on, but she did an episode. Walter Koenig did an episode. George Takei did an episode. In fact, it was the best one of the shows is called, what is it? Something Enough in Time. World Enough in Time. And there is an excellent actress in it that plays Sulu's daughter. I don't know why she hasn't done anything besides that, but you watch that and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, we gotta go.
All right, you guys have a great. We'll be back.
I'm gonna play next week. Okay, we'll be back next week, like she said, and I'm going to play us out. So take it easy and see you next time.